Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Very warm welcome. This is Monday, 22nd August 2022, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart, text 29. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jai Radha Madhav. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe, Jai Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Shri Radhe, Jai Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura, Hari Bol. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतऋषि श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस शिलाई से भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale. Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu Krishne Madhirastu. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart, text 29. ghrāṇena gandhaṁ, rasanena rasaṁ, rūpaṁ ca dṛṣṭyā, śvasanaṁ, tvacaiva, śrotreṇa copetya, nabho-guṇatvaṁ, prāṇena cākūtim, upaiti yogī. ghrāṇena gandhaṁ, rasanena rasaṁ, rūpaṁ ca dṛṣṭyā, śvasanaṁ tvacaiva, śrotreṇa copetya, nabho-guṇatvaṁ, prāṇena cākūtim, upaiti yogī. ghrāṇena gandhaṁ, rasanena rasaṁ, rūpaṁ ca dṛṣṭyā, śvasanaṁ tvacaiva, śrotreṇa copetya, nabho-guṇatvaṁ, prāṇena cākūtim, upaiti yogī. Word by word. Ghrāṇena, by smelling. Gandhaṁ, aroma. Rasanena, by taste. Why exactly? Rasaṁ, palate. Rūpaṁ, forms. Cha, also. dṛṣṭyā, by vision. śvasanaṁ, contact. Tvaca, touch. Eva, as it were. śrotreṇa, by vibration of the ear. Cha, also. Upetya, by achieving. nabho-guṇatvaṁ, identification of ether. prāṇena, by sense organs. Cha, also. cākūtim, material activities. upaiti, attains. Yogī, the devotee. Translation: the devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. Beyond the sky, there are subtle coverings, resembling the elementary coverings of the universes. The gross coverings are a development of partial ingredients of the subtle causes. So the yogi or devotee, along with liquidation of the gross elements, relinquishes the subtle causes like aroma by smelling. The pure spiritual spark, the living entity, thus becomes completely cleansed of all material contamination to become eligible for entrance into the kingdom of God. Before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Shreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rūpaṁ tasyagrajam murupurim mathurim goஷ்ಠಾವತಿ Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri rūpaṁ sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathaन्वितं Tam sajivam Sadvaitam savadhutam Parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Adadandastrinam dante idam yachah punah punah Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dīnabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart, Text 29. ghrāṇena gandhaṁ rasanena vairasam rūpaṁ ca dṛṣṭyā śvasanaṁ tvacaiva śrotreṇa copetya nabho-guṇatvaṁ prāṇena cākūtim upaiti yogī. Translation: the devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibration of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. So in this verse, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is mentioning to Parikshit Maharaj about how the devotee who is engrossed in the remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead automatically gets devoid of all the material entanglements. This particular verse very clearly reminds us of that wonderful verse in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam which is described about the unadulterated devotion of Srila Ambarish Maharaj. So that ghrāṇena word is used there as well. Śrotreṇa is shrutim is used. So in that particular verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that very wonderfully describes about Ambarish Maharaj's pure devotional service. So it starts with the words Savai Manah Krishna Padaravindayo. So it is mentioned about Shri Ambarish Maharaj that his mind was totally absorbed at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Savai Manaha Krishna Padaravindayo. And what else did he do? Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane. Whenever he was speaking, he was talking about the glories of Vaikuntha, the spiritual realm of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Vachamsi Vaikuntha Shrutim Chakara Achyuta Satkatodaya. What was he hearing? He was hearing about Achyuta Satkatodaya. So Krishna's another name is Achyuta, one who never falls down. Achyuta means who can fall down, and Achyuta is one who never falls down. So Shrutim cha akara Achyuta Satkatodaya. Ghrāṇam cha tatpada saroja saurabhe. So his nose was engaged in smelling the flowers that are offered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tadbhritya sparsha anga sangamamam. His skin was in touch with the pure devotees of the Lord. So all his senses. So it is described. Pado harikshetra padanu sarpane. His legs were engaged in going in the places of pilgrimage where the Supreme Personality of Godhead performed his pastimes. Shiro Hrishikesha Padanu Padabhivandane. His head was engaged in offering obeisances to Hrishikesha. So Krishna's another name is Hrishikesha. Hrishik plus Isha. Hrishik is senses and Isham is the Lord. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is actually the Lord of the senses. So what does it mean? It means that the natural position of the senses is in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the senses are engaged in the service, Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. This is a definition of pure devotional service that is given by Srila Narada Muni, the best exponent of devotional service, and the person who inculcated this pure devotional service in wonderful devotees like Dhruva Maharaj, like Prahlad Maharaj. Whatever stories we hear where the pure devotees are created or become the purest of the devotees, it always, most of the times, it involves Srila Narada Muni, who is the catalyst in terms of inculcating that loving devotional service. So Srila Narada Muni gives so therefore he is the best exponent of pure devotional service. And he gives the example of, or he gives the definition of what is pure devotional service. The start of pure devotional service is sarva upaiti vinirmuktam. So one has to give up all designations. When there is designation, it means that it is under the influence of false ego. Because under the influence of false ego, ahankara, so the false ego is called ahankara. Ahankara vimodhatma karta ahamiti manyate. Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasham. Yah pashyati tathatmanam akartaram sapashyati. So it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita by Sri Krishna that Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasham. That actually all the activities are being done by the modes of material nature. So when there is mode of goodness, we are engaging in spiritual activities. When there is mode of passion, we are engaging in the activities that is making us attached to the material world. And when there is mode of ignorance, we are totally in a state of indolence, in a state of inertia, not doing anything. So it is even worse than being in mode of passion, because in the mode of passion, at least the consciousness is being used for some material endeavors. But in the mode of ignorance, the consciousness is in a sleeping state. So the consciousness is not being used at all. So this is the state and the material world, that one is constantly under the influence of the modes of material nature. And therefore, ahankara vimudhatma karta hamiti manyate. So actually, all the activities are being done by the modes of material nature. Under the influence of modes of material nature, the living being in a conditioned state is performing lots of activities. If someone is becoming a billionaire, for example, the main mode of nature under which the person is operating is mode of passion. If someone is meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the platform under which that meditation is taking place is mode of goodness. Of course, when that meditation becomes one-pointed, with no other adulteration, not even an iota of any other adulteration, it becomes transcendental. It transcends even the mode of goodness. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. So this is mentioned by Lord Shiva in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam about the purified mode of goodness, which is transcendental even to the mode of goodness. So that is possible from the platform of Sattva. Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam. So when one is in the mode of goodness, what does it produce? It produces transcendental knowledge. Rajasa lobhamevacha pramada moho tamaso bhavato ajnanamevacha. So when one is under the mode of passion, one is greedy to accumulate more and more material goods. And rajasa lobhamevacha pramada moho tamaso bhavato ajnanamevacha. What is the mode of ignorance? It is pramada and moha. Pramada nunam pramatta kurute vikarma. Yadindriya pritaya apnoti na sadhu manye yadatmanoyam asannapi klesha dasa deha. So that is pramatta, pramada. So unfortunately, it is like a state of intoxication. That is mode of ignorance. So when that is the mode, then nunam pramatta kurute vikarma. So under the mode of ignorance and mode of passion, there is this vikarma. The activities that are performed are not conducive for one's development in the spiritual realm. So this is kamesha krodesha rajoguna samudbhavam mahashano mahapapma vidyena miha vairinam. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that what are the real enemies of any person, especially in the conditioned state of existence. So the enemy does not lie outside a person. The enemy actually lies within the person, and the friend also lies within the person. Mana eva manushyanam karanam moksha bandhane bandhaya vishaya sangha mokshaya nirvishaya mana udhred atmanatmanam natmanam vasade atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmana. So this is mentioned by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita about the mind. So one has to reach to the state of higher states of vibrations, which is based on love, peace, purity of existence, sattva samshuddhi, abhayam sattva samshuddhi. So all these are qualities. So in the state of peacefulness and love, and in the state of purity, there is no the negative states of vibrations like fear, like hatred, and all these different negative vibrations do not exist in that state of surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Krishna mentions, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja. So that is surrender. So when Krishna actually says Sarva Dharman Parityaja, give up all the religious activities, just surrender onto me. So Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Ma Shacha. So Krishna mentions that I give you this promise, or don't worry at all, Ma Shucha. What will I do? I will take away all the impurities. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Ma Shucha. So Krishna says that don't worry. So that is the how does one start in that direction of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? It starts when there is sarva upadhi vinirmuktam. That is the starting point. When one is so with whenever a person gets a body, a material body, immediately there is identification with the body, and that is upadhi. That is the designation. So when a person is born in a particular country, person says that I am from this country. Immediately there is designation. He is born to a certain parents. These are my parents. Immediately there is designation. If he has siblings, these are my siblings. Another designation. So there is continuous addition of designations immediately when there is the material body. But there is actually a real designation. The real designation is Jivere Swarupa. That is a Swarupa, the original form. What is the original form of all the living entities? Jivere Swarupaya Krishnera Nitya Das, eternal servant of Krishna. So that is the original designation. And that is the same designation for all the living entities. Then a question might be asked that if that is the case, then wouldn't it become monotonous? That if everyone is servant of Krishna, then there is no variety. Therefore, there is this Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Therefore, there are all these different types of relationships that is established between the devotee and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. There is a Shanta Bhav. The Shanta Bhav is in the which is neutral, the neutrality, and generally the neutrality is expressed by acharyas as that kind of relationship where one does not have a particular. So sometimes it is also said that it is not part of the Shanta Bhava, is not part of the Vaishnava relationships that a Vaishnava devotee would establish with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it is based on neutrality. Then there is Dasya. So from here, there is this Vaishnava relationship that is established. For example, Daruka, the charioteer of Krishna, or even the epitome of this example is Hanumanji, who was eternal servant of, and who is eternal servant of Sri Ram. So he is totally in that mood of Dasya Rasa for Sri Ram, always in the mood of servitude for Sri Ram. He is constantly in that absorption of the names of Sri Ram. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai. So totally absorbed in the name of Lord Sri Ram. That is the Dasya. That is a relationship which is of servitude. Then there is Sakhya. Then there is Vatsalya and there is Madhurya. So Sakhya is the relationship of friendship, which is that of like Krishna personally says, Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttam. So Krishna sa evam mayate adya yoga prokta puratana bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etaduttam. So Krishna mentions to Arjuna that this imam vivasvate yoga proktavan aham avyayam vivasvan manove pravah mano rikshavake bravit evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu sakalene hamata yogo nashta parantapa. So Krishna mentions that he first told the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to the sun god billions and billions of years back. And sun god told it to Manu told it to Ikshvaku. So this is the parampara system. This is the way of transmission of the spiritual knowledge, which happens from one generation to another generation in the disciplic succession. Parampara praptam. And who can understand this transcendental spiritual knowledge? Imam Rajarshayo, one who has got the state of existence of a Raja and Rishi. So one who is in the state of king and in the state of mendicant. So kingly mendicant, if it is. So what does that mean? Rajarshi means that the person is ruling in the interest of all the citizens of that state or country, that person is not ruling with selfish interests. So that is Rama Rajya, which is called, epitome of that is Lord Sri Ram himself, who always had in his heart uh, the well-being of all his citizens in mind. That is Rajarshi. So there is no tinge of selfishness in that uh, ream. So uh, in the conditioned state of existence, when there is power, when a person has got power and authority, unfortunately, the corruption begins. Because in the conditioned state of existence, one is not, uh, so there is samaloshta ashma kanchana. So jnana vijnana triptatma kutastho vijitendriya yuktityuchyate yogi samaloshta ashma kanchana. So the rishi or the sages who are totally absorbed in the loving devotional service of Krishna, they are triptatma, jnana vijnana triptatma. They are totally, uh, they do not want anything else other than that loving devotional service for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the highest state of existence, which is very rarely achieved. Sa Mahatma Sudurlava. So Krishna says that such a great soul is very, very rarely seen. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanvan mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti sa Mahatma Sudurlava. After many, many births, a person in knowledge surrenders onto me, Krishna says. Jnanvan mam prapadyate. And what happens when one surrenders onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead? One sees Vasudeva sarvamiti. One knows that everything belongs to Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva. And such a great soul is very rare. So that is the highest state of existence. So the conundrum in that state of existence is that one does not want anything, one does not need anything. So therefore, such a person taking up that place of power and authority uh, does not arise unless one is in that. So there is Goshyanandi and Bhajananandi. There are two types of pure devotees, two categories of pure devotees. So one type of devotee is called Bhajananandi. So one who is totally absorbed in bhajan. In this case, the bhajan means total absorption in remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, hearing about and chanting and remembering. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnum Smaranam Padasevanam. So such a devotee who is in that state of existence of total absorption, bhajan, they are bhajananandis, and because of that, they are not interested in any kind of power or authority, because they are totally absorbed in the loving devotional service of the Lord. So we have this wonderful acharyas like Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So they are in that category where they are totally absorbed in the loving devotional service of Krishna, in pure love of Krishna. They are in that category of Samaloshta Ashma Kanchana. So a pebble and gold. So they do not differentiate between gold and a stone. That is the highest state of existence. And then the other category of this is Goshtyanandi, one who likes to, after their absorption in the loving devotional service of the Lord, they want to talk about this and bring this to all the living entities in this whole universe. That is Goshtyanandi. And Srila Prabhupada is a perfect example of both a Bhajananandi and a Goshtyanandi. One who is totally absorbed in the lotus feet of the Lord, and at the same time totally absorbed in transmitting that knowledge to the whole universe. So that is the wonderful state of Srila Prabhupada. who is a perfect Goshtyanandi and Bhajananandi. Both total absorption in the lotus feet of the Lord and total absorption in transmitting that message to the whole universe. That is beautifully described by Srila Prahlad Maharaj. Naivo duje paraduratyaya vaitaranyas twadvirya gayana mahamrita magnachita shoche tato vimuka chetasa indriyartha maya sukhaya bharam udvato vimudhan. So Srila Prahlad Maharaj says that naivo duje paraduratyaya vaitaranyas. So I am not personally, I'm not worried about this existence in the material realm, which is very difficult to overcome and reach the spiritual world. So personally, I'm not worried about that. Srila Prahlad Maharaj says. Why? Because Tvad Virya Gayana Mahamrita Magna Chitta. Because I can always be absorbed in glorifying you and your transcendental, wonderful, glorious pastimes. Tvad Virya Gayana Mahamrita. What is it? Maha Amrita. Amrita is nectar. So it is the greatest nectar. What is the greatest nectar? Virya Gayana Mahamrita Magna Chitta. Your wonderful activities. When I sing the glories of your wonderful activities, that is the greatest nectar, Mahamrita. And what happens when I'm doing that? Magna Chitta. My mind becomes totally absorbed. Tadvirya Gayana Mahamrita Magna Chitta. Shoche tato vimuka chetasa indriyartha. Maya sukhaya bharamutato. But I am always concerned and I'm always lamenting for, unfortunately, those conditioned living entities, Srila Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Vimukha Chetasa, whose face is turned away from you. So instead of, if Krishna is here, instead of looking at Krishna, they are Vimukha. They're turning away from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vimukha Chetasa, their mind is totally turned away. Then what happens when one becomes Vimukha Chetasa? Indriyartha, Maya Sukhaya. When one is turning away from Krishna, one is unfortunately getting entangled in Indriyartha Maya Sukhaya. One becomes entangled in the sense gratificatory pursuits, Maya Sukhaya. So, and the word Maya, Ma means not and Ya means this. So, whatever sense gratificatory pursuits the conditioned living entity is engaged in, that's why Krishna says that Matra Sparshas tu Kaunteya Shita Ushna Sukha Dukkha Agama Paino Anityas Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. So this, what is based on the senses getting in touch with the sense objects, it is temporary. Agama Apaino Anityas. It comes and it goes, and it is temporary. Therefore, Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. So Krishna says that bear it, O Arjuna. So this bearing also is valid for the so-called happy sense gratificatory pursuits. Somehow, in the conditioned state of existence, the thinking is that the happy sense gratificatory pursuits are something that should always happen, and the sense gratificatory pursuits that are not bringing that happy sensation should never happen. But actually, a person in knowledge knows that even the so-called happy sense gratificatory pursuit has to be forborne. It has Tams Titikshasva Bharata. One has to become patient and just not get totally plunged into that sense gratificatory pursuit. In the conditioned state of existence, because one thinks that one is only the body and the senses, and the sense, whatever the touch of the senses, whatever it gives, the perceptions that is giving, that's the only truth. When one is under that impression in the conditioned state of existence, one is always looking for the senses that gives a good feeling, and one is running away from the sensory gratification that gives bad feelings. But when one is in the state of pure absorption in the loving devotion service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one knows that whatever type of sense gratificatory activities are happening in the conditioned state of existence, everything should be just taken as that it is coming and going. It's coming and going, not getting indulged in it. Because when one gets indulged in it, immediately one comes into the bodily platform. And when one is in the bodily platform, it is very difficult to understand our original state, which is, as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, achedyohyam madahyohyam, akledyo ashoshevacha, nitya sarvagata sthanur, achaloyam sanātana. Krishna very beautifully mentions in Bhagavad Gita about our original constitutional position, which is that we cannot be cut by weapons. Our body can be cut by weapons, but our real existence cannot be cut by weapons. Our real existence cannot be burned. Our real existence cannot be made wet. The body can be made wet, but not our real existence. It cannot be dried. And one is nitya, sarvagata sthanur, achaloyam sanātana. So this is our original constitutional position. And that original constitutional position is upaiti, sarva upaiti vinirmuktam. And it's totally devoid of all material designations. There is only this designation that one is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that service is rendered in those different relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we said about Sakhya, then there is Vatsalya. That is the relationship where one becomes the parent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is that amazing, in the Sanātana Dharma, this wonderful state is very beautifully described in the Sanātana Dharma, in this eternal occupation of all the living entities. So, savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. It is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that what is that supreme religious activity for all the living entities? What is it? That is yato bhaktir adhokshaje. It is a loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead who cannot be known by blunt material senses. Adha krita akshaja. So one who cannot be seen by the blunt material eyes. So one has to apply the salve of love, ointment of love in the eyes. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santas sadaiva hrideshu vilochanena. Then one can always see the Supreme Personality of Godhead within heart and everywhere. Yomam pashyati sarvatra. Sarvam cha mai pashyati. Tasyaham na pranashyami sa cha mai pranashyati. So Krishna mentions that one who sees me in everything and me everywhere, such a person never forgets me, and I never forget such a person. So that is through the eyes of jnana chakshusha. So it is through the transcendental eyes that one can. So that is yato bhaktir adhokshaje. Ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. And ahaituki, hetu. So there is no cause. The real devotional service is where there is no cause. In the devotional service that is tinged with karma and jnana, karma mishra bhakti and jnana mishra bhakti, there is, it's not ahaituki. It's not costless. It has some cost. What is the cost? The cost is that, for example, if someone wants something, so chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritim arjuna, arto jignasur artharti jnani cha bharadarshana. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that 4 kinds of people come to me. One who is distressed, arto jignasu, one who is inquisitive, artharti, one who wants wealth, and jnani, one who is in total knowledge. So Krishna mentions that 4 kinds of people come to me. So the one who's distressed, they are coming to the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that they want to remove that distress. So they come to the Lord and say that, please remove my distress. But one of the wonderful things of devotional service is that in whatever way one comes to the Supreme Lord, the fact that one is going to the Supreme Lord is the most important thing. Therefore, there is this beautiful verse which says, Akama sarva kama moksha kama udaridhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So yajeta is worshipping who? Purusham param, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whatever way, so it does not matter if there is some desire in the beginning in terms of approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It does not, there is no issue with that. Because the fact that one is approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead is itself a great fortune. So we see in the story of Dhruva Maharaj as well, that initially Dhruva Maharaj was approaching the Lord with the desire that he wanted to first of all sit on the lap of his father and then possibly become the inheritor of his kingdom as well. But not the inheriting of kingdom was not his prime motive. It was mainly to get the love of his father, to sit on his lap. So Dhruva Maharaj wanted this, and then Srila Narada Muni came and he actually tested him as well. He said that it will be very difficult for you. You are a very small kid. You will have to be in the forest and meditate for a long time. But Dhruva Maharaj was determined. And then Narada Muni said, okay, you can start meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and meditated such wonderfully that Supreme Personality of Godhead himself gave his darshan. He personally came and he was there in front of Dhruva Maharaj. And when Dhruva Maharaj sees Lord Krishna, he says that Kachan vichinvan api divyaratnam swamin kritarthosmi varam nayachi. So sthana abhilashi tapasi stitoham yam prapyavan deva munindra guhyam Kachan vichinvan api divyaratnam swamin kritarthosmi varam nayachi. Dhruva Maharaj says this wonderful prayer. He says that I was looking for glasses when you yourself are the wonderful diamond, and just by seeing you, I don't want anything else. Varam nayachi. So he said that I do not want any boon from you, because your glimpse of your wonderful you yourself giving your glimpse to me is enough for me. I don't want anything else. This is the wonderful state of going to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even if one is in the state of distress, one wants wealth, one is inquisitive. Of course, jnani is the topmost state, the person in knowledge. So therefore, Krishna says in the next verse, Tesham jnani nityayuktam eka bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi jnani atyartamaham sacha mama priya. So Krishna says that among these four categories of people who come to me, the person in knowledge is engaged in one-pointed devotional service to me. Eka bhaktir vishishyate. And therefore, priyo hi jnani atyartama. Therefore, a person in knowledge is very dear to me, and for him also, I am very dear. It is like a pure relationship of reciprocity, the reciprocal relationship of pure love, which is constantly anandambudhi vardhanam. That wonderful relationship between the pure devotee of Krishna and Krishna himself, there is no end to the eternal bliss that it provides. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Anandambudhi Vardhanam. So it is an ocean of bliss which is constantly increasing. There is no decrease. It is constantly on increase, eternally increasing. Pratipadam Purna Amrita Swadanam. At every moment, there is this total nectarian, blissful taste that is happening. Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that all glories, the total victory, transcendental victory for this Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, this chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is when one is totally absorbed in this chanting of this transcendental sound vibration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is called Golokera Premadhana, Harinama Sankirtana. So this is said by Narottam Das Thakur. He says that this Harinam Sankirtana, this chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is that love. It is the prema dhana. So it is so in the material world, one is after dhana. Dhana is wealth. But what is the greatest wealth? It is the love for the Lord is the greatest wealth. Because when that love for the Lord is present, nothing else is needed. So it becomes that absorption. When that absorption is there, one is totally satisfied in that absorption. One is totally out of this material world, in the transcendental realm of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the transcendental state to be. So when we see this verse, ghrāṇena gandhaṁ, rasanena rasaṁ, rūpaṁ dṛṣṭyā, śvasanaṁ tvacaiva, śrotreṇa copetya nabho-guṇatvaṁ, prāṇena cākūtim upaiti yogī. So the first lines in this verse is ghrāṇena gandhaṁ, rasanena rasaṁ. So ghrāṇena is by smelling, gandhaṁ is aroma, rasanena by taste, rasaṁ, the palate. So all these sense organs that we have, that is jnanendriya, karmendriya. The karmendriya is the sense organs through which we do our karma, our activities, and jnanendriya is the sense organs through which we receive the knowledge. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the taste. So that is what is mentioned in this particular verse. So through the smelling, so when the smell is used in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that becomes transcendental. Then there is rasanena rasaṁ, and the tongue is used in tasting the Śrīmad-Tulsyam rasanam tadarpite. So in that verse where we were discussing about Ambarish Maharaj, it is said that he's always offering the leaves of tulsi along with whatever he wants to take through the tongue, and offering it to the Supreme Lord and then tasting it through the tongue. So there is Śrīmad-Tulsyam rasanam tadarpite, rūpaṁ cha dṛṣṭyā. So the eyes are always looking at the wonderful forms of the Lord. So then the eyes are getting purified. Rūpaṁ cha dṛṣṭyā, śvasanaṁ tvacaiva. Contact. Tad bhritya gatra sparsha anga sangamama. So we mentioned about Sri Ambarish Maharaj that the sense of touch, his sense of touch was engaged in being in contact with the pure devotees of the Lord, in touch with the pure devotees of the Lord. Śrotreṇa copetya nabho-guṇatvaṁ. So śrotreṇa, hearing, shrutim chakara achyuta satkatode, as we mentioned. So kamam tu dasye nacha kama kamyaye yathottama shloka gunashraya rati. So in the end of that verse for Ambarish Maharaj, it is mentioned that kamam tu dasye nacha kama kamyaya. So all these senses are engaged as in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not for personal sense gratification, but as a service. The senses are being engaged. Hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam. So we were mentioning about Narada Muni's definition of bhakti. So we said that it is, first of all, removing all the designations, sarvopadi vinimruktam. Then what happens? Tatparatvena nirmalam. Then one becomes pure, because it is when all these material designations are added, one is identifying with something that one is really not. That is Maya. Maya mayamidam akhilam hitva brahma padam tvam pravisha viditva. This is mentioned by Srila Shankaracharya in Bhaja Govinda. So therefore he says that brahma padam tvam pravisha viditva. So this whole conditioned existence is something that is temporary. Maya mayamidam akhilam hitva. But when one is brahma padam, when one attains that brahma padam, when one knows aham brahmasmi, sarvam khalvam khalvidam brahma. So these are all the Veda Vakyas. So when one is in that state of mind of understanding that we all are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, mama eva amsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanātana, eternally, then in that state there is only one designation, and that designation is serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead in whatever way the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants me to serve. So that is then tatparatvena nirmalam. Then there is hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam. The real service starts when all the designations are taken away. Until then, the service is good because it is helping us one to purify and take off the designations. Because whatever service one is doing, if it is not being done from the state of amanitvam, from the state of humility, amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, arjavam, acharyopasanam, shaucham, stharyam, atma vinigraha. So this is mentioned about the qualities of the person who is rendering this pure devotional service. So the starting quality is amanitvam, total humility. So if that is not there, then unfortunately that upaiti still exists. The designation still exists. And when the designation is existing, the nirmalta will not be there. Purity will not be there. When the material designation exists, the purity is not there. And when the purity is not there, then hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam. That pure engagement of the senses in the service of the Lord of the senses, the master of the senses, does not take place. Then if that does not take place, then there is no bhakti there. So, in the beginning, one cannot directly become totally pure. So therefore, it is Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantastoi Abhadrani Vidunoti Shrutam. So one is constantly hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead as much as one can. So when one is hearing Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna Katha, when one is hearing, the activity by itself is Punya Shravana Kirtana. It is totally pious, pure, that hearing and chanting of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. Then what happens? Hridayantastohi abhadrani. Then all this designations and all this, so that is the removal of designations that takes place when one is hearing and chanting and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the remembrance is the most important actually. Smaranam. Smartavya kirtitavyascha dhyaya pujyascha nityada. Tasmat bharata sarvatma bhagavan ishvaro hari. Shrotavyas kirtitavyascha dhyaya pujyascha nityada. So this is, of course, if the remembrance is not directly coming, then Shravanam Kirtanam is very important. And Shravanam Kirtanam will give smarana, will give remembrance. Hearing and chanting about the Lord will give remembrance. And when there is remembrance, then it is like a cycle. The cycle of transcendental absorption in the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which will help us one come out of the cycle of another cycle, which is the cycle of birth and death. So that is the That is the sum and substance of this verse, where it is mentioned ghrāṇena gandhaṁ rasanena vai rasaṁ rūpaṁ cha dṛṣṭyā śvasanaṁ tvacaiva śrotreṇa copetya nabho-guṇatvaṁ prāṇena cākūtim upaiti yogī. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. So all this is being done in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam. And when that is done, then there is bhakti. Bhakti pareshanubhava viraktiranyatra syat esha trisha eka kala prapadyamanasya yadashnutasyu tushti pushti kshudapayanu. So it is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that when one is engaged in pure loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, immediately there is this anubhava, this experience of para isha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is experience, paresha anubhava, and then viraktiranyatra syat. Automatically there is renunciation from everything that is not directly related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the example given is yadashnutasya tushti pushti kshudapayanu. So when one is eating something, one is feeling satisfied, tushti, one is getting nourished, pushti, and kshudapaya, one's hunger is getting dissipated. So all these three things happen simultaneously. So similarly, there is loving devotional service to the Lord, loving devotional service, the experience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the detachment from everything that is material happens simultaneously. And that is what is mentioned in this verse. So with this, I would like to close this discussion. You see there are comments, Nayan Shah Jai Shri Krishna is saying, and Karan Chaurasia Jai Shri Ram. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.